All right, so back at it again. Finally got it all settled. I'm going to be recording and doing live all together. So this is a 7-year-old machine that I got pretty much recycled. So really nice computer case. Can't really argue it. It's an old school Antic with built-in sound deadening. It's an old i5 2300 quad core. So not high performance, but again, this is a great starting platform for anybody who wants to learn how to build a PC from scratch. I took it all apart. Again, I'm filming this as we're doing the live stream all at the same time, so you guys can see all the components in nice high quality resolution. But we're gonna talk. There's a live chat up there, so definitely feel free to comment and learn down below, and let's have some fun building a computer. All right. So step one, we pretty much disassembled the computer completely. You guys can see that. I've taken the back panel off, the front panel, the actual cages, the power supply out. So all that's left that you see here are pretty much the basics. Rear fan, top fans, everything that you need to get in some flow in here. Now, the only downside of this case, it does have front fans, which we don't have. So we're going to sacrifice one of the top fans as an intake fan to optimize the cooling inside this case, which is very vital because of heat over time. What a lot of people don't realize, when you guys have a case of this style where there's a front cover and it sucks air in through the sides, these holes are not the best holes in the world, and they restrict a lot of airflow. Even though you do have a fan sucking air in, it's very restricted. So without having fans on the front of this case, and you only have fans up here, your heat is just going to be kind of stagnant. So it's just going to chill in this area. So we wanted to push some air in, have air to come out, and we want that air to be cool, so we want it coming from the front. What's really cool about this case as well, it's 100% chambered off. One of my favorite features about this. So heat from the power supply and the hard drives are separate from the compartment here of the actual motherboard and all the other stuff. So that's one of my big features about this case. And this case, remember, is 7 years old. So this tech was really new, or not new, but kind of new from when it was coming out. Especially when you're getting chambered cases or cases with actual wire management. It's a really neat feature to see in a really old computer case. We're going to flip this guy upside down on the other side to show you guys what you see on the back of a case. And what you see here is pretty much these 4-pin connectors are called Molex connectors. These are old school fan connectors, very common to us old school computer guys. Pretty much they're designed to be daisy chained. As you can see here, they all interconnect on top of each other, kind of like that. So you can get 3 fans wired up, all nicely put together like that. And then you just get your power supply plugged in, and all 3 fans will be controlled off of one. Now, the downside of this is that since this is old school, there's no fan regulation, no fan speed control. So what happens is that these go either they stay on at max speed, low speed, or mid speed, whatever they are set up, and that's it. They don't have a way to regulate speed, which is okay. In this case, it's actually really nice because, again, this case is sound dampened, so you won't hear a lot of that, which is one of my favorite features about this case. They already have some cable management, little zip ties here, and these are reusable zip ties, which are really cool. So we're definitely going to reuse those. This is what we call a front panel controller or cables. We have pretty much front USB 3.0. Again, this is an early adapting 3.0, so this has a cable to go to the USB ports that splits off into a 3.0 port, which is, again, interesting for its age. This is a USB 2.0. You guys can see that. USB 2.0. And the way that you can tell, if you didn't know, count all the pins. There's 5, 9, and there's one that's blocked off on the corner. Whenever they're always blocked off on the corner, especially the right-hand side, that's how you know it's a USB adapter, not a 1394 or what we also call an audio port. And I'll show you the audio port really quick here. This is an audio front panel. Again, it has 5, 3, 1 blocked off, and then 1 by itself. So that's how you can tell the difference between audio and USB here. I'm going to show you guys this one as well. And you'll see there's 1 blocked off and then 1 blocked off, 1 over. And that's how we know we have audio, front panel audio. This is USB, and this is front panel audio. Sometimes on some really cheap cases, these aren't labeled. So you're going to have to look at these blocked out pins. And the nice thing about these blocked out pins, these blocked out ones will tell you where to plug them in on the motherboard. Straightforward, super cool. I love it. Now this right here is what we call a front panel controller. This pretty much tells us how to turn on the computer, power it off, reset button, hard drive light, and speaker or power light as well. So what's really, really cool about this one, this is an older Asus or Asus motherboard. This came with a little plate here. So you plug in all your wires and you just go pop it into the board. Super cool. It made life a lot easier to set up your motherboard. I love these. If I ever get these, and if I ever have a spare one, I just toss them in my toolbox because these ports are pretty much standardized, or what we call legacy. Most motherboards will have this port set up by default as a normal function. It's actually a very, very normal, very common port. So if you're going to have yourself a computer, very often this is going to be the same. Now, that being said, it's changing up now some of the boards, so it's not guaranteed to work. If you keep those and try it on another computer, they might not work all the time. Stuff changes, man. Time changes. Time goes by. So let's go back here, and we're going to do motherboard mounting. One of my favorite things to do is to mount a board, because your motherboard is your foundation, is where everything resides, everything goes to. A lot of people like to call it not the brain, but the body of the person, and that is honestly what the best terminology is. It's the body. It's everything that goes into it. So we got it here. This is the motherboard we're using. Like I said, it's an old school Asus board, 7 years old, but easy. Before I mount this, I'm going to show you guys the mounting points for it, and they're very important. If you guys look here, these little brass pieces right here, these are where the motherboard actually mounts to. And typically there's 9, so 3, 6, 9. Now there's 9 because this is what we call an ATX motherboard, meaning it's a standard size board. There's ATX, BTX, Micro ATX, Mini ITX. I think there's ATX Extended. Those are all the different style boards. And what's really cool about these computer cases, again, these all have those ports for most of those motherboards. Not all of them, but most of them. So if you ever come across a board and you're like, oh man, I don't know if it's going to fit, look up the model of your case and see what that case supports before you throw money into it. And then you're like, oh, it doesn't fit, and then you got to go buy another computer case. Computer cases aren't cheap, and you know, sometimes you like one a lot because it looks super cool. So that's just something you guys got to figure out. What this is here, this is what we call the rear I/O panel or plate. I call it the motherboard plate as well. Super, super important about this plate. This plate here pretty much covers the back of the computer case right here. And the reason why it covers it, because it tells the motherboard how to line up over here on the back, or it also just shows you kind of the general idea of what these parts will look like. Very, very important. It just goes in here. Push it in by hand. It should clip in. Nothing difficult. Just like that. Nothing special. Just push it in. Nice and firm. Should be done. So next is your board. Your board is next. The motherboard, again, lines up with those 9 holes that we talked about. I gave this computer case a really good cleaning because it was pretty filthy. Can't do much with the board in the sense of cleaning, so it is what it is on that. Now, what you're going to see is that those 9 ports, or those 9 holes, have to line up with the 9 holes on the board, 9 holes on the actual case. Get your Phillips screwdriver here. Get your screws. Now, depending on how you like doing things, on motherboards, I'm not a fan of really nice and tight. I like to just screw them down. Once I feel like the screw's actually in, that's it. I don't like to put these all nice and snug. For some reason, I'm just not a fan of them. If you ever decide to remove the board, sometimes what happens if you put them on too tight, it'll pull the brass rivets out with it, and it just becomes an issue. I always start with the middle screw. Obviously, I lined up everything else first. I like to start the middle screw because it lines everything else up for me in general. And then what I do is I go from top to bottom down the middle. Again, I screw it down until I feel it grab nice and snug, and that's it. Nothing super hard or tight, just because you don't need to do that. The computer is stationary, so you don't have to worry about these things vibrating and falling off like a car, like an engine, you know? So I'm not overly concerned, again, for that. Almost there. All right, now that we got all 9 screws in, the next part or thing you got to put in is the actual CPU, aka the brain of the machine. I'm going to take it out. I'm going to clean it off, and I'll be right back. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is actually clean off the old thermal paste or thermal compound, because it's important whenever you remove the CPU. You have to take that off. It's just good practice, and make sure you leave it on the board, rub it off with a piece of paper, and just the top of the surface. Don't mess around with the rest of the computer. Just the top of that. On your heatsink, do the same thing. Rub off that compound completely so you have a nice clean surface. If you guys see that, clean surfaces are very, very important to this job. So we cleaned off the CPU, and we're going to take it out to show you the importance of this little guy. So this is an i5 2300. Hopefully you guys can read this. It's hard to tell, but it's there. See if I can show you guys over here. Well, it's an i5. There you go. i5 2300. This uses the socket LGA 55. That's how we know this works with this. Whenever you buy a CPU, you got to buy the matching board. You can't just go out there and buy a board. It doesn't work like that at all. You have to buy the matching. Everything has to work together in harmony. So, and the way that you do that is look up your specs. Look up what it supports, look up what it does, you know, do your research. It's super, super simple. What we call it socket. It's nothing else but a socket and where it sits in. We just lay it in. It has two special little notches to go in place. Nothing crazy again. On this socket, you have a little lever. I'll bring you guys over here. Woo! You guys can see that. So it has a little lever here that we pull up, just like that. Has a little screw it goes into. Perfect. Let me get you guys closer here. There we go. So now, CPU installed. I like to install the RAM. Oh, the RAM and the CPU all at once. Before I actually put them inside the board. I mean, put it inside the case. Obviously, that wasn't the scenario today, but we're gonna do that now. So the RAM goes here on this board. This board wants us to put it in slot 0 and slot 2. Typical of the boards is 0, 1, 2, 3, not 1, 2, 3, 4. So 0, slot 0, and slot 2 is where we're going to put the RAM in. And we're using DDR3 1600 memory. Now, if you look here on the RAM, in general, there's a short length and a long length. Just match that up to the board itself. Pull your little clips back. On this board, it's actually pretty straightforward to install. You should hear a little click, click. Easy, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Now, the next step is to putting the heatsink in. So this is an old school setup. I'm not doing it the traditional way. If this was like a high-end build, because I would have done the heatsink plate first and then everything else afterwards. But this is a very, very simple build. So you can put the RAM in first. Not a big deal. Now, this is the old school Intel heatsink here. And these guys are very interesting in how they work. They're clip-based. So you have to actually, like, you'll see here, it clips, and then there's like a locking spot right there to prevent it from going down. So we have to remember, you have to get this in the board and then push it in, and this will spread open to get the clip in place. Now, the thing I hate about these so much is that they never work. They're so hard to put them in. But the next thing is thermal paste, then the heatsink. And I have a really old credit card right here. Cheap tool to have in your toolbox or your arsenal. I've had that credit card, I think, like 10 years now. Now you put about a good, I say, pea-size amount of thermal paste. Use your credit card and kind of spread it. Now, this thermal paste isn't the best. Honestly, this is not really good thermal paste. I like to use liquid metal or Arctic silver. That stuff works really, really good. This stuff is like really cheap. This is a thermal paste. It works. Don't get me wrong. It does the job. but it's not the best, honestly. There's better stuff out there. And what I'm doing right now is spreading the paste around as thin as possible. It doesn't need a lot of thermal paste, guys. Just a decent amount just to cover the center of the CPU. So that's where the heat's all coming from, is the center die. It's just a heat shield that spreads all this. So if most of your paste is in the middle, you'll be good. If you feel like you don't have enough, just a little bit more. And that's it. Don't overdo it, guys. There's a little bit goes a long way. And me spreading it out like this sticks on the card, so I actually lose some. So that's what I'm doing a little bit. But then that's it. On the heatsink itself, I like to cram, just put a little bit on there. And what I do is I just kind of rub it into the surface. I don't do a lot. It doesn't remove it. It kind of like fills in the little metal imperfections for me. I mean, I don't know if it works or not. I just do it. It's been a practice I've been doing for years. It could work. I mean, I don't know. It's just something I've been doing for a long time, and I think it works for me. But I could be very wrong, honestly. So what you got to do first is make sure the bottom one clips. Because if you don't hear that click, it's not going to settle in. This is why I hate these things. They're so sketch. I feel like I'm going to break the board. I'm going to pick this up from the side and we'll show you guys why I hate doing these. So we got 1 out of 3 pushed in. Come on. This is what I hate. I mean, never can get these in beautifully. And I'm just worried I'm going to break it, and then that's the end of the build. All right, we got 2 out of 3. This one's almost in. Whew. I almost broke that. What I didn't want to do is break it. Something flatter. Nope, I'm gonna break it. It's gonna happen. I'm gonna break it. The only one left is this guy right here. There we go. Whew. Almost broke it. All right, so that's done. Let's get back to building. So CPU is in place. Now on the board, you're gonna see, there we go. On the board, you're gonna see on the very top where the RAM sits, CPU fan, power fan, and optional fan. So we always want to go to CPU fan because that's the one that's actually gonna power this guy and tell it pretty much what's going on, you know, control the speeds and whatnot. So that one is thermally controlled. So depending on temperature, spins, the fan spins at whatever speed it's supposed to spin at. So next, in this part of the build is, I was gonna say video cards, but I don't think I can do video cards yet. I think the power cord for the 8-pin and the 24-pin. But to do that, we need to mount the power supply. So let's get to work. Now the power supply is, I guess, the blood of the machine. We're using an old school PC Power and Cooling 750 watt. I mean, that was a lot of power back in the 7 years ago, man. Was very uncommon to see that much wattage in a power in a computer even 8 years ago. But 750 watts is a lot of juice for a computer. Just so you guys know, it's kind of like the average nowadays, but it's still a lot. So on this case design, we require the fan facing up because down below we don't have a cover. So that's very, very important to keep in mind. So we slide this guy in. Now this one has actually some really cool screws. They're handheld, so they're really simple to put on. They're designed to pretty much be done by hand. Let's see here. All power supplies mount using the same 4 screws. It's how the case is designed to mount it. But they all use the same, pretty much. I call it legacy screws because they're all the same. And to me, when I use the word legacy, that means it's standardized. It doesn't change. It's gotten to the point, it's gotten so old that we're not going to change it. If it ain't broke, we don't change it. Simple as that. So using your flathead screwdriver, your flathead for your Phillips. Again, snug. Do not over tighten your screws. They're super easy to strip if you guys aren't very cautious about it. They don't need much to hold them in place, okay? So now we have all these spaghetti factory of wires, and I'm going to give you guys a rundown of what each wire does. A lot of them are going to be repetitive wires, so we're going to start with this one right here. This is probably the most common one to date, which is called a SATA connector or a SATA power connector. This is typically used for hard drives. Now it's used a lot for fans, fan controllers, and water pumps for all-in-one units. So it's a very, very versatile connector. I love it. The next one is the most important one, actually. It's called a 24-pin. You guys can see that 24-pin connector. This guy right here. And it literally is 24. It has 20 plus your 4 here. That's what powers your board. Now we're going to go to 6-pin PCI Express and 8-pin here. Here we go. This is a 6-pin plus 2. 6 plus 2. 6-pin PCI Express, meaning this is what powers a video card or any type of accessory that bolts onto the board that uses 6-pin PCI Express. Very, very high voltage and high ampage power cord. Most high-end power supplies are going to have 2 to 4. There's 4 of those connectors. So those are going to be put out of the way right now. Now this is a 4-pin motherboard connector. Our CPU power connector, or an 8-pin. This actually came with both of them, which is really, really cool. Very rare. Not very common to see this connector. You guys can see that. 8-pin and 4-pin separated. Very, very rare to see both of them as an option on the board when you buy a power supply. Usually they come with this one with 8 pins, and then it's split in half, and you can only use one or the other half portion of it. The last but not least, and the one that has gone officially legacy, is the most common 4-pin Molex connector. You'll see 4 pins. 4 pins, long. These are the ones we traditionally use for fans. It's super, super common, super, super used on everything. So now the power supply, you run all these wires. You see this spaghetti monster we have here, and we're going to run them through the back of the case. So you get this whole monster of wires. You feed it all the way to the back. And then we flip the case upside down, and we find out where everything goes. So 24-pin, most important one to the board. And now this board has it right here. So we're going to leave it there. We're going to use one of these little zip ties, these little doohickeys, to get it going. Before I do that, the one I was very, very curious about, because it wasn't plugged in to the back, it was plugged into the front, was the 8-pin, this guy. And this is actually really short. It's a really short 8-pin connector. And it makes me sad because you can't run it through to the back like a traditional case because it's so short. So this is going to run through the front of the computer case, unfortunately. I hate that. It makes the wire management look so bad. So no biggie, but it is what it is, unfortunately. So the next one is the 4-pin Molex. this guy, the one we're talking about for fans. Since we have 3 fans here, we got 3 Molex connectors. So take advantage of those 3. Honestly, you can use them all separately, or you can daisy chain them. It's your choice. In this scenario, I am actually gonna use them all separately, just because I like doing stuff like that. So now we have all 3 separated. So what I like to do once we separate all 3 is to kind of group them together as clean as possible, without bending them or causing them to bend upwards or cause the cables to hurt themselves, I guess, per se. I'm very, very anal when it comes to wiring. I've gotten worse over the years, in all honesty. If it were up to me, I would cut all these wires and shorten them to clean up the look of the case. But this is the time or place for that, because again, this is a build that we cost absolutely nothing to do. So I'm not gonna do that. I used all the little. I took off all the little cheapy wire sandwich bag ties, I guess you want to call them, and I grouped them all together like this. I'm not a monster. I cut the ends off my zip ties. And then I'm going to group these together with another zip tie. Now, again, we want to keep them flat as possible, so when we lay them down, the back cover actually closes nicely. It's something that you want so you don't damage the back of your case. So that's another set of wires right here. Now, you can go a couple ways about it. If you want to be cheap, you can reuse one of your little twist ties here and just tie that one down. I know it doesn't look the best, but that'll just keep it kind of in its spot right there. The 24 pin and the Molex are going to be the only 2 that I'm going to tie down with these industrial zip ties right here. These really big beefy ones, just like that. That way, just these stay flat. We still haven't gotten to the point where we're going to work on the other ones yet, but we wanted those 2 to get started on our wiring setup currently. Again, we have all this wiring to mess around with and figure out as we work. The next step is to flip this case around. We're going to get this. See this right here? This is the front panel controller. We're going to get this all tidied up. I got another bag of zip ties, but this is already bugging the crud out of me. So we're going to zip tie this whole entire loom here. But we want to keep them kind of separated and not twisted all on themselves. That way it makes it easy for us to get to what we need to get to. So you can never have too many zip ties, just so you guys know, on a build. If you use more zip ties to keep your build nice and clean and tidy, more power to you, man. So we're going to go like that. Since this is the front panel, probably going to use this big one right here. Just to keep things under control. And then we're going to route these down below on the other side of the case. Flip this guy over. Pull this whole entire spaghetti factory again out. Now we got our front cables right here, our front panel. Now, one thing that's bugging me about this front panel, again, I'm so used to older style cases that I have to run the wiring through the side of the front of the case versus underneath and nicely tucked and all nice and pretty. But as we're here, since we're right here, we're gonna install the power supply right here, the 24 pin. And it goes in nice and clean. Pretty, again, super simple. They're not hard to plug in. It's legitimately just clip in and you're done. Man, this is bugging the crap out of me. So, yeah, I'm super, when it comes to wiring on these things. And I can reach the USB with one of them. But audio is way over there. I mean, it might work. Oh man. Okay, so I got USB and audio to fit graciously. Now let's see if front panel will fit in here with this whole entire super snug setup. So this goes in like this. Oh my goodness. I'm so far off. Okay, so the front panel is gonna have to go through the side of the case. Oh my God, this is gonna drive me so nuts. We had it so nice. You guys can see that. We got the wires already nice and tucked right here at the bottom, but not gonna work for us. So we're gonna flip this back over. And unfortunately, we're gonna have to go the other way around. There's just not enough space, or not enough slack, sorry, to do this. It hurts me. It hurts me so bad. You guys don't even know. So I'm gonna see if this works really quick. Oh yeah, I mean more than enough freaking slack. That's for sure. No, I can't make that wings tighter. So what I'm doing right now, I'll show you in just a minute when I get there. It really bugs me. So I'm gonna make it look better, or as best as I can. By zip tying it together, and zip tie it one more time. Just kind of like right here, out of the way. Beautiful. I'll flip it back over, make sure nothing got pulled or is causing a problem or a seam. I'm already seeing a seam right now, so I'm going to put one more zipper tie. There we go. This is beautiful, yeah? Hey? So, now you guys can see. I'll show you what I mean by being anal about this, but I wanted to make sure all these cables sat down flat and to the side like that. I did not want it to stick out and protrude up here. As I said, it bugs me. It bugs the crowd out of me, and I don't like it, so I'm not going to let it happen. So, back to recording that. So now that we got that taken care of, the next step is to power this guy. There's an 8-pin right there. So that 8-pin, unfortunately, has to come through the front of the computer case. And it, oh my God, it bugs me so bad because it's just such a really bad location to run this wire. So that sits in there just like that. Now, what I'm probably going to do, if I can, we'll see right now. Now, there's a channel in here, and it's pushing on this right now, so I'm trying to see if I can do it or not. And usually, when you mount your video cards, this capacitor isn't in the way. You would mount them, and this wire would at least stay a little bit flat down here, and it'd look a little bit nicer. But that's kind of what we're going to be working with right now. So I'm going to go grab a video card and see how that looks. So I don't even know what these video cards are. They're pretty old, but they're 1 gig cards. So we're going to slap one in and then see how that looks with this in here. I mean, it doesn't look bad, but unfortunately to slap in the other card, it won't work. It just will not work. So we can't do that, unfortunately. Man. So we're going to take this one back out. And we're going to just have to let this sit on top. Ugh, that makes me so irritated. Again, if this was me, if I actually had some money to spend on this, I'd go buy an extender and extend this cable and fix my problem. But the irritation, oh my goodness, that's just so much anxiety there. So we got it all clipped in. I like to screw in only the bottom screw first for alignment purposes. No other reason. And I don't even put that one on tight so I can wiggle it. I look down, make sure the card clipped into place on front and back. Very, very important. This card or computer had front USB 3.0 ports. I mean rear USB 3.0. This here. This already has USB 3.0, but only in the back. So to utilize the front one, we need this little adapter, unfortunately. So we're going to mount this in the middle. Just like that. If this case was like had a clear side panel, I wouldn't be doing this right now. I'd be figuring out how to make this not the way it looks. And then this USB plugs in right there. The 3.0 port right there on the board. I mean, it doesn't look horrible, but again, it could be better. So we now have a video card, the rear panel USB 3.0, and then this computer came with a second card, so we're going to slap in a second card right here. Same exact card, just another one. Now, these are both ATI cards, so they'll be configured in a feature called a setup called Crossfire. What Crossfire does, it uses both cards to pretty much boost gaming performance. We're not building a gaming tower, so that really doesn't matter to us, but we still need it to work. So now I'm putting the rest of my screws in, but again, I'm not putting them in snug. Just slapping them in here. Now there's a Crossfire ribbon cable that unionizes pretty much the two cards, just like that. Mates them together, so they become one. And then now I go in here and I just give everything a nice little, not too hard, but just snug, you know. Next is these both cards use 6-pin PCI Express cables. Remember we talked about those earlier? So we're going to run the wire underneath here. We got one here, one here. Now, what we can utilize to our advantage here, because that wire again is just so ugly, we can kind of fish them together to make them look decently one. Kind of like that. I'll use one more and put them together here like that. Yeah, I like that. Looks nice and very clean. But again, it's not that clean because I can see the wires, or the one wire. And then I'll turn the zip tie cable toward the back so it doesn't bother me as much. So now we got power routed to all three fans. CPU fan plugged in. 24 pin here, the 8 pin there, 2 6-pin here. Now, the last thing but not least is your hard drive. So we just plug in the hard drive and pretty much can get going and get this machine up and running. Now, what do you do with all the excess cables? That's the next question. This is a lot of leftover cables. Typically in a build like this, you'd spend the extra change and get a modular power supply. So you only use the cables you need, and then the extra cables just get left behind. Hard drives require a SATA connector. So we're going to pull out one of the SATA cables and just kind of fish it out here. There we go. We're going to fish out one SATA connector. And what we're going to do is everything else, we're going to kind of like bunch up in a little ball here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to zip tie this little ball of wire. Big ball of wire, I'm going to zip tie it and kind of lay it flat inside the case, and that's it. That's all you can really do with this ball of stuff. So I'm going to go get my bag of zip ties, be right back. Well, that certainly sucks. I know where my bag of zip ties went. So we'll see what we can do with these little ones we got. These like Christmas zip ties. We can join them up. Since we're not gonna see these, we're not that big of a deal. Okay, so I got this little ball made. I'm gonna put it down here, out of the way. So we got the last cable here that we're gonna need. Move this case, this not case, but webcam out of the way. So now that we got the wires zip tied and we're gonna get this, we're gonna mount the rack. I forgot we have a couple of racks in here. Now I don't have the rack for the SSD because this one did not have SSDs. SSDs weren't an option when this case was made. So this is gonna bug me more than anybody else, but I want to see if this works. Give me a second here. All right, cool. So there is a way around this. Now we're going to be using a 2.5-inch drive because I don't have anything else lying around. So definitely sorry about that, but you know, you got to work with what you got. So what I'm doing is moving these little GUIs around. These are pretty much just vibration absorbers. And this case was really designed to be super quiet, so that's cool. And then now this hard drive will mount like this. Got a set of screws right here. This is not an SSD, so I wish I had the, I wish I had the money to do a nice build, but this will do. And this was a completely free computer. Someone at my job recycled it, so I'm going to put it to good use. Don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. Maybe make a little media server or a gaming console to play some old school games. And it's got the horsepower for pretty much old school games, that's for sure. Maybe a computer for my nephew to have him learn how to use a computer. Maybe get him to PC gaming. He is finally at the age I can get him involved now in games and stuff. I've been kind of keeping him away from video games. He actually has no idea how fun they are, because he doesn't really play them, or I don't let him play. He's an outdoor kid, so he definitely spends his time outside. Okay, so we got the hard drive actually mounted on the rack. I'm actually very surprised I was actually able to do that pretty easy. So we got that mounted there. This is another hard drive rack. Super cool. Like I said, I love this case design. This case was definitely designed for the worker, not for gaming, that's for sure. So, all mounted. That needs to be a little bit snug. All right. So, everything mounted. Now I gotta get the power supply over here. Its own little power cord. I mean, the hard drive with its own little power cord. Now there's a DVD drive, but I'm not going to use it. Can't remember the last time I needed a DVD drive. So the SATA cable here is really long. Again, this bugs me because this doesn't have any wire management for these type of setups. So these wires just don't look the best. But that right there is a fully assembled computer ready to get Windows installed and see how it runs. And then we're going to do some other stuff. So let's get that going. We're going to show you how I install a copy of Windows on here. It's super, super easy. So that'll be the next video. But thanks for tuning in for this episode of assembling a computer all together. We'll show you how to do some stuff in Windows to get it booted and installing Windows 10 next. But definitely appreciate you guys tuning in for this. And we'll talk later and we'll see some more fun stuff. All right? Peace out, everyone, and have a wonderful night.